Well, hello, and thank you so much for joining me. You've joined me in a very special place. Take a look out here. This is just a tiny part of, the amazing Tau Game Resort in South Africa. It's one of the amazing properties owned by Entrepreneur Resorts right around the world. And not only is it an amazing place to stay and observe these animals, it may well be that as we go through, we might see some of the big five coming down here to get some water. But not only, as I was saying, is it an amazing place to stay, but I thought it would be a very interesting place to do a micro degree on creating impact. Now, to make it easier for you, I've got my laptop right here alongside me, and from time to time we'll be delivering not from time to time, we will be delivering some important content for you. And to make it easier for you to grab all of that content, then we'll be referring down to the laptop screen and some important ideas. In fact, let's start with an important idea. Let's take a look down there right now. You'll see down there we've got a word that brings up all sorts of emotions for different reasons, for different people. The word, of course, is charity. Now, one of the things I would love us to do for the period of this micro degree and beyond it is to really not think even about that word. And the part of the reason for that is there's a revolution going on in the way in which we create impact in giving. And so we need to get out of our minds this whole thing about, XYZ company proudly supports ABC charity and so on. And so this is not about doing that. What it is about is creating three important things. Let's take a look down at the screen again to see what those things are. So they are these. They're impact, habit, and connection. Again, impact, we're going to look at that in just a minute. Habit and connection. Now let's take a look at them one by one. So when we look at impact, the important thing about that from our perspective is, and the thing that I want you to carry through this entire micro degree with, is this important thought that when we're giving, it seems to me it should never ever be about the money that we're giving. It should be much better, or it would be much better, if it was about the impact that we're creating. And one of the things you're going to discover through this micro degree is that as a result of implementing some of the ideas that we'll be talking about, you'll be able to make more impact in our world than you ever thought possible. If we look at that second word there, the word is habit, then habit is one of the secrets to doing that as well. Now, what I mean by habit is if you think about your business, it's never one thing that kind of catapults your business off. It's really a series of tiny things, most likely, little things that become rituals, become habits that you do each and every day. Those are the real things that help you create a sustainable and growing business. So it's not about, going to a charity ball and maybe feeling guilty about it at some point. That's just a one-off thing, and that's not what smart giving is all about. So we'll talk more about that second idea of habit in just a moment. And the third idea, I think, is probably the most important idea of all. It's this: connection. One of the things you're going to discover is that what we're going to be doing here is showing you how you can use very, very smart giving to connect to you, to connect to your team so that together you get this great sense of meaning and purpose, to connect to your clients so that they feel more connected to you, and of course your prospects as well, to connect to the communities of which you're part, and of course to connect to our world in ways that I think will astound you. So that's kind of like where we're going: impact, habit, and connection. So let's take a big look now at giving. So when we think of giving, then the question, an interesting question that arises is it a choice or is it an obligation? I'm not sure how you see that, but just to let you know how I see it, and many of the people with whom I work see it, they see it as an obligation to do things that kind of make the world a better place. And most of us have this good fortune to be doing great things and so on, but there's other people in the world, as you know, that don't. And isn't it interesting if we think about that we have an obligation to create a better world? Now, interestingly, you're going to discover that in B1G1, then what actually happens is that the obligation is there, as you'll see, but it's obligation, as you can see on your screen, that comes with choice after choice after choice after choice. So it's obligation with, as you can see, a whole lot of choices. Now, importantly, when we think of obligation and when we think of giving, there really are two ways that we could do that, if you think about it. We could do it like this, as you can see, which is essentially, let's do it here, which essentially is kind of handing out. Now, the problem with handing out is that it creates dependency. What we think that's really smart giving would do, most of the time anyway, is to actually hand up, to empower people to do even greater things than they're doing right now. So giving is about obligation, but there's choice, and it's all about handing up. It's a very important difference between handing out and handing up. Talking of important differences, there was something very important that happened on the 23rd of September 2015, and it happened in Geneva when the United Nations on that day did something that they'd never ever done before. They acknowledged that when it comes to making impacts and differences in the world, it is not governments that actually do that. Now, governments can of course help, but what the United Nations did for the very first time is to acknowledge that it's businesses that actually have the potential to make the biggest difference in our world. And on that day, they created these things that you can see on your screen right now. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, sometimes called the Global Goals. And it's very important, we think, that you bear these Sustainable Development Goals in mind when you're doing your giving, when you're creating impacts. And you'll see a little later on just how easy that is to do. And there you see it actually on your screen, because in B1G1, the Sustainable Development Goals are right at the heart of that. So your giving can automatically be linked up to the global goals. So what is going on in our world? Why is it that the material that we're going through in this micro degree is really, really important? Well, let's take a look. Here's a chart which talks about the 2016 giving, $390 billion of it in the US. Now, the actual number may not be the same, but this chart that you're going to see is pretty much the same distribution in every country. And I think it's going to give you some really interesting surprises. For example, 72% of giving comes, believe it or not, from individuals. What about the rest of that pie chart? 8% comes from bequests that people make in their wills and so on. Have a look at this. Another 15% comes from foundations. And you might say, well, where on earth is business in there? Take a look. Right now, it's actually 5.36%. And if you look deeper into that number, you find that most all of it is what we might call coming from the big end of town, the larger multinational companies. And so in other words, the small to medium scale businesses that represent 70% of the businesses on this planet, they don't even figure in that particular number right there. Now, there's a reason for that we're going to have a look at right now. Have a look at this. And we think, as you can see on the screen, that the challenges are way too big for us most of the time. But let's question that, and let's have a look at some really important numbers. It turns out that if you were to look at the additional amount of money that was required just for 1 year to give all the kids in the world really good education, look at the cost, it's $22 billion. Now, that sounds like a lot of dollars, but stay tuned. What about if we were to look at providing drinking water to the 700 million, close to 700 million of people who don't have access to water. Look at that, 23 billion. Again, it seems a very large number. What about this one? What if we could give a nutritious meal to every child? Well, that would cost $30 billion just for a year. Now those numbers seem really, really big, but it's almost like compared to what? Well, let's have a look compared to what. When you look at global industries around the world, you find that this is just the amount of money we spend on magazines and media in a year. Look at that, 168 billion. All of a sudden, the 22 billion seems a little less, doesn't it? What about this one? This is what we spend on drugs, the big pharmaceutical companies, $1 trillion. And how about this? We know that it would take $30 billion in a year to feed all of the kids, make sure they had nutritious food, but contrast that with the amount of money that we spend on fast food, 568 billion. Now, please understand, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing those things on the right-hand side. What we're trying to do here in this micro degree is to give you a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. So stay with those numbers, if you like, on the left-hand side of your screen. Now, the reality is that sometimes we think that the challenges, though, are still too big, even though we've put them in that particular context. But what if that was simply not true? And then the other thing that goes on sometimes is we think that, oh, okay, well, I get that there are those problems out there, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wait until I'm successful. And then I'll start doing something about it, because I'm just a tiny little business and I couldn't possibly make any impact on those numbers. Well, what if that wasn't true either? And talking of successful, let's have a look at this definition of success. This is coming up on your screen there, is Seth Godin. Now, Seth is, as you probably are aware, one of the most sought-after marketing minds in the world. His blog, which you can get at sethgodin.com, is something you certainly should get, by the way, and it comes out every day, and it's just magical to be able to read his thoughts every day. Here's a thought from not that long ago, talking as we were a minute ago about successful. He said, "The challenge is not to be successful. The challenge is to matter." Think about what that means. What it actually means is the more that we can matter, the more we can fix some of the issues, the more that we can become indispensable to the people that we're serving, rather than dispensable, rather than, you know, part of the mass, the more we can start solving some of the big issues, even though we're tiny, tiny businesses, then the more we are going to matter and the more successful we will become. Another way of thinking about that is to put it this way, that the challenge is not just to matter. The challenge is to make a real impact too. So let's you and I go on this journey to look at what is required to build this major impact that we're going to show you in just a moment. And as a way of doing that, let me just pose a couple of what ifs to you. You can see that one on the screen. What if the only reason to build a business is to impact our world? Just think about that for a moment. And what if the only reason to complete this micro degree is to build a business that impacts our world? And that leads us into a way of doing it through B1G1. And we're going to have a look at how that works in just a moment. But before we do that, let's just take a look at impact. Now that we've got all those stats out of the way, let's kind of change pace for a little bit and have a look at impact. And there's 4 things that I want us to have a look at. I want you to imagine that it's now totally possible to make more impact in our world and on our world than you ever thought possible. Just imagine that. And what if it was now totally possible for you to connect much more deeply than ever before with your prospects, your team, and with your clients? What if? Just think about what difference would this make to your business? And here's a third thing for you to ponder. What if, by understanding all of the things that we're going to be discussing in this micro degree, that it was now totally possible for you to attract and retain great people on your team and to attract and retain great clients as well? So that's the third question. Let's have a look at the fourth one. What if it's now totally possible to build a business making real impact and to have this underlying core of meaning and purpose as well? Well, here's the good news. By you completing this micro degree, you're going to discover not only that that's totally possible, but it's actually quite easy to do. So let's find out how. Specifically, how to make more impact in our world than you ever thought possible, how to connect more deeply than ever before with prospects and with clients, how to attract and retain great people and great clients as well, and how to build a business making a real impact with meaning and purpose right at its core. And you right now are in exactly the right place to figure out how to do that. And here's why, quite literally. Let me just for a moment share why I do what I do in B1G1. And here it is up on your screen. I get up every morning to give business owners the power to create more impacts in this world than they ever thought possible, so that we can move together to create a world that's full of gratitude. And why would we want to do that? Well, quite simply, that's a happier world. So let's you and I explore now how we do that. And how does B1G1 turn up in our world? We're going to have a look at lots of examples. This one comes from Melbourne. You can see it's actually a drive-through coffee shop, as it turns out. And you can see called Coffee Drive-Through. And you can see just by looking at your screen right there how they do that. In this particular case, when you purchase a latte cartel coffee, a child in Africa gets access to life-saving drinking water. Very, very simple thing to do, but now you see how the giving is impactfully linked to a particular transaction. Now, one of the things you can discover is it doesn't need even to be linked to a transaction. Stay tuned. Talking of water, let's have a look at this one. This is a club, actually a bowls club. And you can see there, by the way, these labels that you see were actually printed by a B1G1 printer. One of the great things about B1G1 is that there's this wonderful community of like-minded, like-thinking people that can combine together into a movement and do amazing things. So when you buy that bottle of wine and you turn it over, look at that. 37 kids get, now, by the way, this one says water, the previous one said water. This is not about water. Stay tuned. And as they say down the bottom, we hope it impacted your life as well. And then when you get the glass, of course, not going to be 37 kids this time, you can see the number right there. Just a simple example of how you can impactfully connect. By the way, in that particular club, you can imagine what the conversation is now. It's all about giving. They've even removed all of the TV monitors and the football stuff and everything else that you see when you go into Bowls Club. So let's go a little stage further. Let's have a look at this. This is interesting. This is a lady called Rachel, and Rachel joined B1G1 on a particular Monday afternoon. There were a whole host of people in a room. I was doing a live event in Sydney, and a lot of people came up and joined and were giving credit cards and all of that kind of stuff in order to do that. And it was around about 2 o'clock, and Rachel just looked at her watch and said, "Oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock, or it's nearly 3, and I've got to get back to my office because I've got a potential client coming in." She said, "I don't know what I'm going to do with B1G1, but we'll just go through it, and I'll call you in the morning and let you know what happened." So here's the story that she told the next day. Turned out that the client that she saw, his name was Kevin, and Kevin was in the music industry. So Rachel is a fee-for-service financial planner, so they talked for an hour or so, and then she presented the plan to him, and he loved it. It was a $4,000 fee for that particular plan, and he gave Rachel the check, and around 5:15 or so they shook hands, and Kevin left, a very grateful client. Now this meant that for the first time, Rachel now goes to her B1G1 system, and she remembered something that I said. She pushes a little button, by the way, called impact, because she's now going to make some impacts. So she pushes this impact button, and she remembers something that I said that particular Monday afternoon. I'd said, you're always in total control. You'll see more about this in just a moment. You're always in total control, and you can choose how much you give. There's no concept of pledging, and certainly no concept of X% of the profits go. Please don't ever say that, by the way. And so she thought, well, okay, so I've just had a $4,000 transaction, so how much can I reasonably afford to give? Her answer was $20. Now it could have been 1 cent, as you'll see in just a moment. So she said, okay, I've got the $20, so she does that. But now the question comes, well, who am I going to give to? What project, B1G1 project, am I going to choose? So she's then faced with these 800 projects right around the world, and which of course is a complex choice. But fortunately, there's a search box, and not surprisingly, she types in a word in that search box, and the word is music. In other words, what B1G1 allows you to do, if you so desire, is to actually match the giving you're doing to the interests of the client. So she types in music, and up come all of the projects in B1G1 that happen to have something to do with music. The project that caught her attention was a 50-cent project. Every project in B1G1 carries like a tag of in this case 50 cents, which tells you what it costs to make the impact. So she reads the description of the project. It turns out that it's for slum children in Mumbai who have a particular problem. The problem is not dyslexia, but it's very close to it. So what that means is when they're looking at the whiteboard in their tiny schools, they can't keep up. When they're reading, they can't keep up. So what's the link with music? Well, it turns out that someone has developed an Indian music CD. And by the way, we visited this project. It's amazing. An Indian music CD, such that when the kids plug this into their ears, what happens, it kind of disturbs their thinking systems in a particular way, so that their reading can now be much, much faster. Still not the same rate as the people next to them, but much, much faster. So therefore they can get out of poverty quicker. Now, you remember, she said, well, that's a good project. Now, you remember we said it's a 50-cent project. So now she makes this little calculation. Oh, well, I have 50 cents. I have $20 and this is 50 cents. So guess what? Oh my goodness, that's 40 children. And she's absolutely right. So then she does the giving, and then she, have a look on your screen, she creates this giving or gratitude certificate and emails it to Kevin. Now let me just blow that up for you, and you can see what it says. Let's read it. In particular, go to that second paragraph. To celebrate you joining us, we'd like you to know that you've permanently impacted the lives of 40 children. And Kevin, you've done that through the gift of music. Now, imagine that you were Kevin at this point in time. Imagine how you would feel. And by the way, Rachel said that when he called her that morning, essentially all he could say was, "Hello, Rachel." There was such a lump, if you like, in his throat because of this connection. Now, remembering, and by the way, how would it feel if you were able to do something like that as well? Stay tuned. You're going to see lots of other examples. Take a look at your screen again. This is an email. This happens to be from an accountant in Cheltenham in the United Kingdom, but let's just have a look at the signature on the bottom of his of that particular email. It says, "Sent from my iPhone and changing lives by providing a day's education for a child in need through our partnership with B1G1. So many people are now doing this, right, and around the world. So again, you see how it can be embedded in everything that you do. Interestingly too, have a look at this. This is fascinating. Just a little while ago, you can see on your screen there it says We Fill Events, but we'll blow this up for you in a minute. But let me just give you the context. Just a little while ago, I was involved in doing some speaker training for a company called We Fill Events in Melbourne, as it happened, in Australia. And it was a 4-day and pretty expensive program. And so when people would go to the website, they couldn't register for the training. They had to engage in a conversation. They had to kind of register their interest, and then they would engage in a conversation with some of the people from We Fill Events. A conversation that would check whether what the program was doing was right for the people who thought it might be, and in other words, whether there was some compatibility and whether the program could really deliver what those people wanted. Now, obviously that meant that there were a fair few people who didn't come to the program. Now, you might think, well, so what? Let's just get on with it and let's do the program. Well, have a look at what they did. Let me blow this up for you and we'll go through it together. Now, this happened to be sent to people who did not come to the program, people who didn't make it. And this went out a couple of days before the program started. Hello, Belinda. You know that, as you know, you've been part of a special project for us, the Masterclass Speaker Accelerator. Now, whilst you're probably not attending, in fact, you're certainly not attending, we were able to make some magic happen today, purely as a result of you being in our world over the last few months as we've been promoting this training. And there's a spelling mistake, as you can see, in this bottom line, but let's read it anyway. Today we ensure that the following happens on our planet thanks to, and obviously it should say thanks to your help. So let's see what it does now. Take a look at this. 10 years of clean, life-saving water. Have a look at all of the things. A rescued girl in need is given life-changing education opportunities. 10 children in a rural village. You can see, and all of this was done by that training. Again, very, very simple, very profound. And something else that you see is that you're not limited to doing one thing at a time. Why would you want to do that? Let's go a little stage further, and you can see, talking stage further, that was kind of like where the rest of the that email went, and you can see that, like pretty much every single person who's part of B1G1, they all want to tell everybody else about it, and so they did that, as you can see on the bottom of that particular email. So let's see if we can summarize this and where we've been so far. By the way, lots of good stuff coming up in a minute as well. And let me give you 7 reasons, or 7 ways, if you like, that B1G1 allows you to create meaning and purpose in your business. So first, right here, you can match your giving, as you've already seen. You can match it to things that your customers love as well. Pretty interesting. So your giving can match it. You saw that in the example of Rachel. Secondly, you can give to, or you can choose from, actually it's closer to 800 now, stunning high impact projects. And by the way, talking of those projects, very important that you understand that not every project can be a part of B1G1. In fact, it's very tough for projects to be in B1G1. Currently, each project has to go through a series of hoops, if you like, and then they get submitted to the board. And even at that stage, the board currently rejects something close to 6 out of every 7 projects who apply to be a part of it. Now, what that means is that when you see a B1G1 project, you know that it's an awesome project. So that's the second thing. What about the third thing? Well, you can give, as we mentioned a little while ago, from just 1 cent. So this is not, like I require massive things to do. So again, even tiny, tiny businesses, you can do that, right? What about this? Very interestingly, have a look at it. 100% in B1G1, 100% of your giving goes to where you want it to go. And interesting enough, even this, because by the way, I'll show you in a moment how people join the movement, and there's a little fee for doing that, as you would expect, and you'll certainly see why that is in just a moment. But what that allows B1G1, which is a not-for-profit, what that allows B1G1 to do is to stay sustainable, and at the same time it means that 100% of your giving can go, because we take nothing off the giving. And even more importantly than that, as you know, when you do stuff on your credit card, the bank takes, you know, a piece of that, right? And we actually make that up, so we can always look you in the eye and say, no, 100% of your giving went where you wanted it to go. And as you know, that is very, very rare. Let's look at what else we've got here. Oh, as we said right up front, remember when we talked about impact, habit, and connection, it's never about how much you give. It's always about the impact that you create. And you can see, and you're going to see this in just a moment, because we track, literally track, every single solitary cent of your giving, and you can display that in a fascinating way, which we'll get to in just a moment. And then the seventh thing is, nothing in B1G1 that you do is ever etched in stone, because you're always in total control. You can change this very, very frequently and very, very easily. So where does that lead us? Well, we've been talking about the giving. Let's have a look, as I'm doing this again at this wonderful place, let's have a look at where the B1G1 giving is right now. Have a look on your screen. Look at this. I think you're going to see it's up above 100, and there we go, 136 million from all of the business giving impacts in our world, from all of the businesses just like you who have chosen to be a part of this magnificent movement. So let's see some other things. Oh, remember earlier on I mentioned that it's not just about matching transactions to giving. Doesn't have to be a cash transaction or a particular sale. For example, let's have a look at this. This, I'm sure you use LinkedIn in your business. If you don't, you probably should be using it. So I want you to imagine that you connected with someone. His name, by the way, this guy, a lot of people do this now, but he was the first person to do it. His name is Adam Houlihan. And you might want to take a note of that, Houlahan. Just connect with Adam, and this is kind of what you'll see. So have a look on your screen again, and imagine if your name was Jonathan, this is what you see. Thank you for your connection request. When you did it, something great happened. You've helped prevent blindness in 11 children by providing them with a rich source of vitamin A. Not only have you stopped children from becoming visually challenged, well, you can read all of that, but all of this and more has been made possible, says Adam, by his premium partnership with B1G1. He believes, as I'm sure you do, that every business has the power to change lives. Now, what's interesting, or the power, if you like, to make more impacts than you ever thought possible. Now, what's interesting about this particular example is people say, oh, I bet that, Adam's got a lot more connections by doing this. And yes, that is true. Many, many, many thousands. And his business has grown dramatically, not just because of this use of B1G1, but from other uses as well. And you might say, well, surely Adam does it then for that reason, to attract more people. No. Adam does this because this is who he is. In fact, when he first saw B1G1, and maybe you're feeling like this as well, when he first saw B1G1, what he said was this: oh my gosh, I've been waiting for something like this all of my life. It's that transformational. So, and talking about them, let's have a look at this. This, on your screen, you'll see a giving map. This is something that Adam and you can have up on your website, for example. And it's a fantastic example of us tracking the giving. And let's just click the button here and you can see, and I'll show you how this works on websites. It's so easy to put it on your website. But the thing is, you notice here, look, Adam is a one-man business. Notice how his giving is not just to one thing, it's multiple projects. And so when you look at this, you'll think, my goodness, Adam's impact is, global, which it is. And you can see how we're talking about the impact. It's not so many dollars we're given and so on. We're talking about the impact, 740 days of access, 30 daily doses. You can see all of those things. It's a very, very powerful way of connecting. Now we'll see some more examples of this in a moment. And because, by the way, there's other ways you can use this map as well. But let's go and imagine an office, okay, using B1G1. Let's imagine an office of a speaker. And let's imagine this was the office of somebody called Tim Wade. Now, Tim is actually a very extraordinary speaker. He's got B1G1. And the reason I'm showing you this, by the way, is just to show you what's possible. And so stay tuned. So you can see he's got the B1G1 label on his card, and why not? Because, you know, proudly a partner of B1G1 Business for Good. And you really should have that on your card as well once you're part of B1G1, because you'll find, like Tim, that it changes up every conversation. So now Tim can say, because he's part of B1G1, just like you can say when you're part of B1G1, whenever someone does business or connects with us, we make sure something great happens in our world. Something great, of course, being all of this, all of the projects that Tim would be involved with. Now, what I'd love you to do, if we were sort of face to face right now, I'd love you to cross your fingers. Here's why. What I'm going to do, you can see down there on your screen, it says, well, let's go see. So I'm going to do something that people say you should never, ever, ever do when you're doing something like this and when you're doing it live. What I'm going to do is click here, and we are going to go see. And there we are. And we can see Tim's website, the front page, if you like, of Tim's website. And then down here we can see all of the organizations and things that he works with. You can see that on the left-hand side. And then, you know, Tim's profile and everything else. But then up here, it talks about how his giving helps us change the world. And you can see there is the UN Global Goals as well. We'll have a look at that in a moment as well. So let's now click that link and see where that leads us. And this is where it leads us. So this is how Tim connects to the global goals. And what's really interesting is you can see here on the screen why he does what he does and so on and so forth. But what's really interesting is you can click on the global goals, for example, and you'll see exactly what Tim's giving is doing. And this, of course, is linked into the coming from, that information is coming right from the B1G1 system. What about good health and well-being? Let's just click on there. So you can see, there you go. And so that's one of the projects there. So again, people will get with this that Tim really is making a difference in our world. Let's go look at another business. This is a business in just north of Sydney, actually, and it's called, as you can see on your screen, Blue Tribe Co., run by a guy called James McGregor. And let's go have a look at this tab, which is called Impact. What this is all about is how, so here we go, we'll just click the tab right here. And what this is all about is showing you, remember we talked about impact, habit, and then connection. And we've shown you ideas that link into those three things in this micro degree. But here's, I want to show you something really, really cool, because what's happening now is we're connecting to people who may not even transacted with us by showing them through the B1G1 resources, which makes it so easy to put this stuff up on your website. So for example, there you see our why, or in this case James's why, and here you see the map right here, and we can of course move this map around and do all sorts of things with that. And then over here on the left hand side you see the B1G1 widget, and these are so easy. You just go into your B1G1 account and you copy and paste your widget, and then it updates it like this on your website in real time. And talking of in real time, have a look at this. Here you see, look at that, the global goals, and as we flip through, all of the global goals coming up that James is giving to right there. So pretty interesting stuff, isn't it? So let's go a stage further. Let's look at the screen again, because now you really can see how you can do the things that we started off talking about. You can see how you can make more impact in our world than you ever thought possible. You can see how you can connect more deeply than ever before with the prospects and with the clients. You can see how you can attract and retain great people around you and great clients as well because of that additional connection that B1G1, this smart giving, really lets you do. And because of the way in which it's all being done. This is, again, I told you, I suggested up front that you might want to forget that image that we have of charity, because what this allows you to do is to build a business that makes real impact and with meaning and purpose right at its core. In fact, almost everybody who's in B1G1 uses this phrase. They say, it's transformed my business, and I think it will transform yours. Now, if that's something that you would like to explore, look down on your screen right now and we'll show you exactly how you can explore it. And what you'll see there is a 3-lane highway. Now, it's from a country that drives on the left-hand side of the road, by the way. It's a 3-lane highway to represent the 3 ways you can become a part of the global B1G1 movement right now. On the left-hand side, and remember that's the slowest lane in left-hand side drive countries, is what I call the information lane. It's the lane you'd use if you wanted to check directions and so on. And you can choose that right now. I'll give you the link to do it in just a moment. It allows you to key in things that are important to you. And then based on that, one of the B1G1 team will take time to do a professionally prepared and personally tailored plan showing you precisely how you can use B1G1 to achieve your own giving objectives. Now, next to that is what I call the Ready to Grow lane. You'll choose this lane if you've got all of the information you need and are ready to join the movement. Again, I'll give you the link for that in just a moment. Now that takes us to the high performance lane. Now, as you can see, I'm in a very different place. No lions, no tigers, none of that. In fact, this is the beautiful Vision Villas. It's in Bali, and it's another Entrepreneur Resorts property. This is where we have iLabs, and in fact, in just a little moment from now, I'm about to go up there and work with iLab 51. I always do the first day of iLabs to get them underway, as it were. Now, one of the things that happens at those iLabs is I always give them options to be a part of B1G1. And it's this high performance option that most people choose, hence the reason that I wanted to share it with you. So let's go through some of the key things. Officially, it's called the Premium Partner Track, and it includes a number of really great things. First, you get not 1, but 10 years of full access to B1G1 and everything that means. All of the great things that you've seen already in B1G1 with full support. And on top of that, you get me. Let me explain what that means. Outside of B1G1, then I'm fortunate enough that people invest $3,600 to $3,900 each month to get that one-on-one mentoring with me. But once you're a B1G1 premium partner, you get that completely free. Yes, it's a gift, if you will. And if that sounds like crazy, then you're right, it really is amazing. But as we're traveling in this high performance lane together, then I get so much joy helping people create an extraordinary business, the business that they've always wanted to have. So in that high performance lane, you and I will be traveling together to make sure that you get exactly that. Now, on your screen right now, you'll see all of the options, all of the links that you can take to help you complete this micro degree. So pause the screen, take a look at them, and take whatever action seems best for you. For now, let's get back to Tao. Now, whilst you're thinking about all of those things, I thought for the last 2 minutes that we're together in this micro degree, you might want to have a look at a little video that just goes for 2 minutes that finds or that tells you in really simple terms what B1G1 is all about. Have a look at this. Many of us start our own business because of a vision, not necessarily one that is glamorous or grandiose, but something that is ours. And all of us in business look for that extra dimension to make our entrepreneurial journey more meaningful. B1G1 does just that.
It helps people to realise that you don't need to transform the entire world.
It was much more meaningful for my staff to actually know about what they were doing rather than just giving a sum of money.
It lets you add real meaning and purpose to what you do. It's contagious, and B1G1 makes it so easy to do. With over 100 million giving impacts already, we're making a significant difference in our world. But B1G1's real currency is connection. Yes, we connect our businesses with our carefully vetted, high-impact projects, but we also offer businesses new ways to connect with their teams, their clients, and their own mission. Founder Masami Sato didn't envisage just another corporate social responsibility program.
So if businesses could embed giving into their everyday activities, this has the potential to touch and influence so many more lives every day.
This initiative continues to grow because it connects businesses in brand new ways, ways that are valued by teams and by their clients too. B1G1 gives businesses the tools to effortlessly give to projects that resonate with them so that they maximize their impact on our world and enrich their own company culture by doing so. They become businesses that really matter.
I'd certainly encourage it, definitely. Wholeheartedly recommend people get involved.
Become part of the B1G1 Business for Good community and experience how it can transform your business as well. So, thank you for watching that. Thank you for joining me. Oh, I can see some impala and all of those sorts of things out there right now. So thank you for joining me in this magnificent location. I hope, talking of magnificent, that this has been a magnificent time for you, because now you understand how you and your business can create more impacts in our world than you ever thought possible. Make sure that you have a look at the options now for moving forward through this micro degree. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.